Greetings, wrestling fans. This is Jim Fannin, the guy you love to hate, or maybe you just hated my guts, period. I have the pleasure of leading you into the Mid-South Memories podcast. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the individuals making the statements, and they do not necessarily reflect those of Nickmaniwa, Mike Ruff, or the BNMVS Podcast Network. This podcast is intended for mature audiences only. The IWA Mid-South shows covered on this podcast contained adult themes. Violence for the sake of violence. Bloodshed for the sake of bloodshed. Explicit language. We're on these shows because if you ain't hardcore, you ain't shit. So that just leaves one thing left to say. Nickmaniwa, start the podcast.
Guys, gals, non-binary pals, we in here, Pro Wrestling's BFF Nick Maniwa, joined by Mike Ruff of Ruff.Figures.com, and it is another episode of Mid-South Memories, and boy, do we have a show for you. Mike, how you doing, bud?
We got a big one today, Nick, and IWA Odyssey. I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing well. We're taking it all the way back to January 6, 2001. Highway 62 in Charlestown, Indiana. It is the majestic and, I guess, loved Blue Barn, as CM Punk calls it. He once said on Twitter that he would like to run a WrestleMania at the Blue Barn in Charlestown. Majestic Charlestown, Indiana. What's going on in the world at this time? The number one song on MTV's TRL was The Shape of My Heart by the Backstreet Boys.
Oh, it's a banger.
Banger. Ruling the TV screens. We got Friends, CSI, ER, Everybody Loves Raymond, Survivor as the top TV shows at the time.
I feel like you could say that of any show that we do, except for maybe Everybody Loves Raymond.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Definitely, everything in syndication nowadays. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is the number one movie in the world at the time. I don't know if I've ever seen that. I definitely know the movie, but I don't think I've ever seen it. What about you, Mike?
Never. It's a pop culture legend and something I'm happy to say I've never partaken in.
At the time, in the World Wrestling Federation, Kurt Angle is your WWF Champion of the World. And Edge and Christian are the WWF Tag Team Champions.
Man, still on TV, too.
Right, yeah. Edge just wrestled Minoru Suzuki last night for AEW, or Adam Copeland did.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I thought about it this morning, too, Nick. Someone like, say, Jordan Oliver was like a year old.
Right,
maybe.
Right.
So someone in there, a year old. Like he's
right.
dominating the indie scene right now. He was a year old at this time.
Yeah, I was, 11 or 12 or, whatever the math breaks down to. ECW would run their last pay-per-view on the very next day, that Sunday, with Rob Van Dam defeating Jerry Lynn in the main event. Rhino defeated Sandman for the ECW World title, and it was kind of like a very ECW cash-in kind of thing, where Sandman had just beat Steve Corino and Just Incredible in the Stairway to Hell match, or whatever the hell it was called. And then Rhino came in and beat Sandman. A week after this IWA show, ECW would run their last show ever in Pine Bluff, Arkansas.
Oof.
Yeah.
Nick, do you remember what Jerry Lynn wore for that match?
Yes, those biker shorts.
Available on Ruff.Figures.com.
Right, there you go. Go get you one right now. And I think we talked about it when you made that figure. He had those because he didn't bring his gear because he didn't know if he was going to be paid all of his back pay. So he just didn't take his gear to the show. And then they gave him his back pay or wrote him a check or whatever ended up happening. And then he had to borrow those from Scotty Gibbs.
That's right, yeah. Ill-fitting.
Right. At the time in WCW, Scott Steiner was the WCW World Heavyweight Champion. The Insiders of Kevin Nash and Diamond Dallas Page are your tag team champions, and Chavo Guerrero Jr. is the cruiserweight champion.
Huh. Interesting.
And then, obviously WCW would die in March of that year, so they don't have very much longer for this wrestling world.
But they were still running.
What's that?
They were still running.
Yes. They had 2 months, and I guess Eric Bischoff was trying to buy the company, and yada yada yada, and then it all fell through, and then it said McMahon on the contract, but it didn't say Vince McMahon. It said Shane McMahon.
Life forever was changed.
Right. So many wrestling fans watched that show, turned off the TV, and then never came back to wrestling. It's like a proven thing. Like millions of wrestling fans just stopped wrestling stopped watching wrestling after WCW died.
How's that?
Speaking of dead promotions, IWA Midsouth.
Boom.
We have a one camera shot, no commentary from the balcony of the Blue Barn in Charlestown. But we might be spoiled nowadays where, you see something one camera and you're like, oh, I'm not watching this. They'll miss stuff, or they're, watching this whole show, even though it's only one camera, I don't feel like there was a ton of stuff missed.
Didn't miss anything. Shocking.
The camera positioning, it was just this guy. It was a longtime IWA fan. You can see him and his wife Linda all the way back on the old Kmart building shows in the 90s, and they sat front row in the corner every show, and then they got friendly with my sister Patty and Ian and whoever else, and when we needed a film crew that could film the shows, because we had this guy John Byerly who did like the old Kmart building TV tapings, and all the quality footage from the old Kmart building is John Byerly, and he got out of the business for a little bit, and then we didn't have any filming. Like, it's almost impossible to find 1998 and 1999 footage of IWA because it was either not filmed or it was filmed and then the VHS tapes weren't taken care of, so it's just dead media essentially. Mark came in and he had a camera. He just had a camcorder that he held on his shoulder, and he sat in a chair in the balcony and he would film the shows. He was a smoker, so every now and then you get that smoker's cough on the commentary or on the camera for the commentary of the show. But I don't think it was too bad. He's not hacking and yakking the whole time. Right. Every now and then you get a little cloak. I was gonna say throat clearer, and I put it together, cloak
wearer.
Throat clearing from Mark.
And we talked about it a little bit off air, but the quality of not only the video but the audio was pretty surprising. Like, not only could you see everything, but you could hear a lot more than you can hear nowadays. As far as maybe that's just the fan base too, right? A lot louder and more intense fan base, but you could definitely hear all the little individual comments. And there was a point in the show, I think late in the show, where someone's hit with a thumbtack bat, and the camera just kind of zooms right in on his head, and it's perfect. Like, you could see everything. It was great. I was surprised, especially considering 2001 and some of the terrible wrestling footage that I've seen in the past of stuff that's even more recent.
Right, absolutely. And like you said, clear video, and you can hear, like you said, you can hear every comment from the fan, and then you hear the wrestler's rebuttal, and they're going back and forth and just jaw-jacking with each other. They do a pan of the crowd before the match for the entrances for the first match, and you're like, wow, that's a pretty decent crowd. I want to say it was around probably 200 people or so. We have Sabu on the show, so I think that helped a lot. Yeah. Sabu had come around a lot in IWA, but this was like the start of him. I believe I put in my notes, he did like 6 appearances in 2001 for IWA, and this was the first one, obviously because it's January 6th. So I feel like, the fans were really jazzed for Sabu to be there. But we
And he
start
was
off
hot
the
at
show.
the time. He was really hot at
Yeah.
the time too. I mean, he had just lost the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, I think the week before or the month before, and had won the XPW belt. I want to say the next month or even maybe his next match, I think. So he was pretty relevant at the time. And even though ECW was running, he wasn't there anymore. But it kind of didn't really matter in the progression of his career.
Right, yeah, he had left ECW in like the middle of 2000. I believe his last match in ECW was at the Cincinnati Gardens for a house show, and he wrestled Scott D'Amore. So put that in your head for useless trivia. I don't know why Scott D'Amore would be all the way in Cincinnati when he's a Canadian guy, but whatever.
Or working SABU.
Right. For ECW, but I digress. We have the first match is Shadow Kid versus Isaiah. Mike, what did you think about this match?
The appearance for Shadow Kid was interesting with the masked superstar mask and the sweatsuit or long sleeve and long pants. Interesting choice of match for an opener, I think, especially considering the finish. Is there a story behind Shadow Kid?
Shadow Kid was brought into IWA. He would actually go on, or he had wrestled for IWA before as Adam Gooch, and wrestled for IWA after as Adam Gooch. But he was brought in as like a fake Suicide Kid clone.
Yeah.
So that's why his entrance is, he does the, give it all to me, and then he does the backflip, and then he botches the backflip. That Suicide Kid would do the, give it all to me backflip, land it perfectly. As Kid Rock plays in the background.
Yeah.
So that explains the Shadow Kid gimmick. This is for the #1 contendership for the IWA Light Heavyweight title. I don't believe at the time we had a physical title. I might be wrong on that. Adam Gooch doing an evil Suicide Kid gimmick, who Suicide Kid was the top babyface at the time.
Yep. Yeah.
Isaiah comes out with Phoenix and Richard X as his seconds on the floor. And I've known Phoenix for 20 plus years at this time, and I've only remembered him as a bald man. So seeing him with hair really shook me a little bit. I thought Isaiah was positioning him for the Swanton Bomb, and then he just does this crazy standing moonsault that has like distance on it. Do you recall that?
I saw that. Yep, definitely caught that. And right before that, he hit. I want to say 1 or 2 ridiculous arm drags that were like Ricky Steamboat level arm drags, and I'm not even exaggerating that. It was crazy. I've never seen that from Isaiah. I don't know if that's something that he goes to regularly, but they were fantastic arm drags. And then he hits that standing moonsault, and I felt like he just kind of floated there for a minute.
Yeah.
And man, definitely, especially for a 2001 indie show, Isaiah at this point is very much not an up-and-comer, but someone that fit the era pretty well. And, his appearance with the baggy pants, the sleeveless shirt, the chain, it was kind of Hardy Boy inspired, but also had a little twist on it. And I mean, he fit the time, and his style at that point was, fitting of the 2001, what people wanted to see.
Right, absolutely. We got Brent Blades as the referee for this match, and I put in my notes, I quite possibly rang the bell for this match.
No.
If you appreciated the hitting of it was actually a tire rim welded onto a pole, and you would hit it with a hammer, so that's why it sounds not like a bell, just metal clanking on metal. Because
it's more of a clang, of a clang than a ring. Yeah.
Unfortunately, since this is a VHS tape, there are some terrible tracking issues for this match, but fortunately for us, the viewers, the tracking kind of goes away, and it improves and stays quality for the rest of the show. It just hurt this match just a tad for the tracking. Shadow Kid almost dies doing a Marrow-sault. And then Isaiah almost dies doing a Rana to the floor.
Yep.
So we got some near deaths.
Near death early on.
They start brawling in the crowd,
which is a fantastic segue into Suicide Kid.
Yes, they start brawling into the crowd, and you see someone step in front of the camera, and you're like, "What's going on here?"
And the crowd goes wild, right? The crowd screams. Someone steps right in front of the camera, and you're kind of like mini panic for a minute, like, "Oh my god, what's happening?" And then continue.
Suicide Kid jumps off the balcony, a big senton dive onto Shadow Kid, but obviously Phoenix and Isaiah felt some of that as well. Suicide Kid had lost a loser leaves town match for 30 days, so he was not permitted to perform on the show. And we get into some of that with the post-match promo. But the match goes on. Was there a finish to this? Now that I think about it.
No.
I think it just kind of fell apart, right?
No, it was not.
Yeah.
It fell apart. Totally.
That was the first. Literally, this is the first time I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I don't think there was a 1, 2, 3. Jay Prodigy, the best friend of my pal, formerly Big B of IWA commentary, now medium-sized B, Brian Vincent. Jay Prodigy would wrestle as BDL in like 97, 98 for IWA Midsouth. He was a former light heavyweight champion. There's a famous match with Jay Prodigy versus Suicide Kid versus Reckless Youth from Olytic, Indiana. And Jay Prodigy would bounce in and out. He had some demons. I don't think I don't think that's wrong of me to say. I think his story has kind of been told by Brian and his friends, so I don't feel bad saying that. So he would be into wrestling, and then he would, fade out, and you'd be like, I don't know where Jay Prodigy is, and then he'd bounce back in, and he's back in it, and he's doing something, and then, rinse and repeat, I guess you would say. He attacks Isaiah, and then Suicide Kid gets in the ring, and he's beating up, Shadow Kid. He's beating up Jay Prodigy. They take a powder. Uncle Honky comes out, and it looks like Uncle Honky's going to join up with Shadow Kid and Jay Prodigy, and then he knocks their heads together to reunite with Isaiah and Richard X. And then my pal Jim Fannin comes out and says, this ain't Smoky Mountain, this ain't USWA. We have stips here, and we stick to our stips. You can't wrestle until the 17th. So he had 11 days before he could wrestle. Again, did the Suicide Kid. Suicide Kid cuts a promo, and he's like, Jim, you're just an announcer. I don't know why you're making anything. And I was like, hey, come on, man. He's
Jim Fannin. That's why.
At that time.
And put that stipulation into perspective with today's culture. So at the time, 30-day suspension, can't compete for 30 days. Nowadays, that's not a suspension.
Right.
Nowadays, you're not having shows within 30 days of each other.
Right. Yeah.
No.
I mean, we were running every week, and I think at this time we're running twice a week. So, he's missing 8 shows.
Right.
In a month.
Right. Nowadays, you're missing 6 months and no one bats a lash.
Right. Any other comments for this first match with Isaiah and the Shadow Kid?
My knowledge of Uncle Honky was nothing until we talked about him off air a little bit. I feel like there's an unwritten rule in wrestling to where if you are wearing overalls, you are somebody's uncle or cousin or some distant hillbilly related relative. So, if we got a guy named Uncle Honky, he has to wear overalls.
Right, and he used to wear the overalls with no shirt underneath, and then he got merch shirts made. So then he started wearing that. I used to actually own an Uncle Honky shirt. I don't know if I bought it or he gave it to me, but at one point in my life, I did have a white shirt with red font on it that said proudly in giant text, Uncle Honky.
Oh, did you wear it?
Definitely. Yeah, I wore it all the time.
I feel like you can't wear that now.
Yeah. If I found the vintage Uncle Honky shirt nowadays, I would not be rocking it. But maybe an undershirt.
When I was in, I'll say 3rd grade, maybe 4th grade, I had learned how to use a computer well enough to create word art, and also knew what an iron-on transfer was. So, of course, as a young wrestling fan, I think it was 1998 or so, my favorite wrestler at the time was Ken Shamrock, right?
Yeah.
What's Ken Shamrock's moniker? The world's most dangerous man. So on a white undershirt and black word art, I created a shirt that said world's most dangerous man, and I put that thing on and I wore it to school. You can imagine how well that went over with friends.
Right.
Like, no, it's Ken Shamrock. The back of it says Ken Shamrock. You got to read the back. Like,
right, you got to see both sides. That's great.
Respect to the t-shirt culture.
Right, respect to Ken Shamrock too.
Yeah, he didn't have a shirt at the time. It was just those funny Kmart shirts that had his badly pixelated picture on it, and I couldn't wear that. I get made fun of for that.
Right, for sure.
Unless it's Goldberg.
Next up, we have Alistair Fear versus Me Mitch Page, the #1 contendership for the IWA Heavyweight title, with Roland Hard as the special guest referee. And the referee shirt does not last long on Roland Hard. He is painted into that sumbitch. And he goes, you know what? I can't move. Let me take this off, and I'll just hold it.
The funny shit was with this one too, Nick. He came out with the Black Man Inc. shirt on over the referee shirt.
Right.
Took that one off. Had the ref shirt on. Took that one off.
Right. And then had another
another
2XL
one.
click. Yeah. And the 2XL click.
That's a good intro to my first question for you as an insider. Who sourced Roland Hard's shirts? Was it him? Did he make them himself?
If he didn't make them, he had a buddy, because he would have shirts like that. The Black Man Inc.
Yeah.
Kill Whitey.
Yep.
He was the Funkin' Phenom. So like once Undertaker started using Roland, he started using Roland by Limp Bizkit, which really is a great theme for someone named Roland Hard.
Yeah.
And he would just have different shirts, and they would do the Mean and Hard shirts later. And I want to say he made those himself.
He was well before his time.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
See that stuff all the time. You got the pro wrestling tees and everything, and Roland Hard.
Right.
I imagine him in his living room ironing on letter by letter. That's probably not how it went down, but that's the mental picture that I have.
If it wasn't him, it was probably his wife. If it wasn't him, it was probably his wife, because then they would bring their kids to the shows, and they would also have like matching shirts sometimes.
But it matters, right? It makes a difference. That's what I remember of Roland Hard, is the stuff like that.
Right.
Besides the goofy stuff, he was dedicated to that character and put it over with the t-shirts every single show.
Right. We have some comedy here with Roland as the ref. I feel like this could have went a lot shorter. I feel like a lot of matches on the show could have shaved about 5 to 8 minutes off, and it would have been fine. He's a crooked referee, so he's eye poking Alistair Fear, and he's helping Mitch. And,
that's the first thing he says.
Stuff.
Yeah,
it was really funny stuff, but it could have been condensed a little bit.
Right. He gives a little demo of the rules up front. He's no eye gouge like this. Boom, gouges the eyes.
Right. Right. Don't pull his hair. Don't do this.
Exactly.
Do this. Yeah. Mitch hits an impressive second rope elbow drop in this match with some distance, and you think of Me Mitch Page, and you don't really think of high flying moves. He does the Vader bomb for a finish, but you don't really think of him jumping outwardly. And he fucking went to the middle of the ring for this elbow drop. I was like, holy shit.
And physically, he looks great.
Yeah, I believe Rico said he was like 283 pounds.
Yeah.
So he was losing weight, and he was
and at least
great.
83 of those pounds were his head. His head didn't change sizes. His body changed, but that head is massive. That's a big head, and on a big body, you don't notice it until his body's smaller, and you're like, man, that's a big head.
After the match, Mitch turns heel on Roland. Madman Pondo returns, and the MMPs, as they were called, Madman Pondo and Mean Mitch Page, the MMPs, were officially formed. Tuff Tony cuts a promo, and he looks just like Steve Manders. with the hat on. I don't know if that was just me, but I was like, that looks like. I was like, who is that? And then he opened his mouth, and I was like, oh, it's Tony.
Yeah, the unfortunate part about that heel turn too is that the camera pans away right as it's happening.
Right.
So like he hits him and you hear it and it goes back to the ring and you see him on the ground and you're like, oh crap, they missed it. It gets the point across, but you missed the actual act. And I think on camera it definitely would have been more, effective if it had been. I mean, obviously it doesn't change the move, doesn't change the perspective of the fans' attendance. But watching it, 20 something years later, you're like, oh man, that's a bummer.
Right. And Mark didn't do that often, but he maybe thought someone was coming out or whatever the issue was. But yeah, I forgot about the missing of the turn there. Any other comments for me, Mitch Page, and Alistair Fear?
Pondo's appearance with the prime mullet is great.
Dude, you want to know something funny? For the Pondo match, I literally have. Let me find it. Epic Pondo mullet era.
Mine literally says Pondo with prime mullet.
So we're on the same freaking page when it comes to that.
And going back to the match, Mitch Page at the beginning of the match comes out the Juggalo shirt. Obviously, that's going to be a thing for him. Throughout the match, he's very much babyface with rolling, fucking around, having fun. And at the end, he is the most heel you'll ever see. He says, "I don't give a fuck about IWA. I don't give a fuck about this. I don't give a fuck about you fans." And it's like, I feel like part of that art is lost nowadays. A heel turn is, it's more of to check that box that you're now a heel than it is to actually make people hate you. Like this motherfucker was high-fiving and slapping hands and all the whole deal in the beginning. And at the end of the match, he's like, I fucking hate you. I don't, I don't want anything to do with any of you guys. And that's what makes the heel turn effective. It's not so much that you're like, hey, raising my hand now, I'm a heel now, boo me. It's like, give them a reason to hate you now.
Right.
And if it's as simple as saying fuck you and fuck your company, that's all it takes.
Yeah, I'm not sure when the MMPs break up per se, but I do know that January of 2002, Mean and Hard are reunited and are together. So it's crazy that could have happened, a year earlier if Pondo, hadn't come back around or whatever, because Mitch and Rowan were having some fun and they looked like a great team, and then it's all for nothing because Pondo's back and they're going to run roughshod over IWA Mid-South. Up next, we have for the IWA Mid-South Heavyweight title, Harry Palmer with Chris Hero as the challenger, taking on Cashflow, the champion. Cashflow had won the IWA title, I want to say, on a Wednesday show, and we called the show For the Love of the Money. And little known story about that, Ian did not tell Cash that he was winning the match. So Cash pinned him with something, and then he just held Cash on top of him, and the ref counted 3. And then Cash was like, thought something got messed up, and then he was like, "You're welcome, bud." And
the show was called For the Love of the Money?
That the show that he won the match, the title for, the show was named after the
okay. I was going to say, if the show was called that and he didn't realize that he was going over,
right.
Yeah.
Sometimes we would just have shows and then Patty or Ian or whoever would name them afterwards to make it easier to order the shows or whatever.
Instead of the numbering convention that most organizations use now.
Right. Harry Palmer comes out to the porn music from American Pie. Did you notice that?
I never got that. Oh man.
He used to come out to Short Dick Man at one point in his career.
I'm disappointed I didn't
another
catch
banger.
That.
But if you listen, when Jim is violating that pie, the music playing, I believe, is, or maybe when he's, I forget when in the movie. It's been a while since I've seen it. But that's definitely the American Pie porn music.
Man. And then Cashflow comes out to Offspring, of course.
Yes. pretty flat for a white guy.
Yep.
A buddy of mine that wrestles for APW, Ascend Pro Wrestling, his name's Party Mike. He just stopped using pretty flat for a white guy. And every time he would come out, I would think of Cash Flow. And when Cash would wrestle Roland would do the Carlton dance as Cash was coming out. Because that's what the guy does in the music video.
Yeah.
But I digress. These are two Ian Rotten trained wrestlers, both Harry and Cash Flow, a product of the IWA Wrestling Academy, the Ian Rotten Wrestling Academy. Cash Flow still doing it today. Former OVW World Champion, former OVW, I forget what the other title was.
And also Netflix star Cash Flow.
Netflix star Cash Flow, still at it. He made his debut in 1997, so still at it strong, still hitting the town, still hitting people really hard with his hands.
You would also never know that was the same guy. Not right. For the bad, but just, I mean, the dude's been working this hard for that long, and he does not look like the same person. And bless his heart, he's still going.
Right, absolutely. I love Harry Palmer. I think he's hilarious. I thought he was always a good worker. He did a little bit for us in the later years of IWA. He did the return show in 2013. And then he would pop in and out. Him and Mitch had a few matches where it was comedy during the Jammers era of IWA. You know, he would always, it would always be, you know, trying to talk him into the show because he worked at UPS and a bunch of his UPS buddies would come to the show and buy merch and buy concessions. So that's why we always had a spot for Harry Palmer. There's a crazy, I don't even know what happens here. I don't know if he's jaw jacking or what, but a lady from the crowd comes and like slings water from a water bottle on him. And I'm like, what is happening? And then Harry, not at the lady, but in the direction where the lady was walking, I guess, throws a chair and is very upset about this. And I kind of don't blame him. Like, don't throw shit at me when I'm entertaining you or I'm trying to entertain you. And I just thought that was a crazy scene, like definitely not something you would see in 2024.
Right. Unless it's calculated, like the Blake Christian stuff where we're all throwing water bottles at them.
Right,
yeah,
right.
I agree. I think there's that rule where you don't touch and they don't touch, and that's the agreement.
Right, totally. At one point, Harry, the thing with Harry is when he turned heel, they would call him fat and call him chubby and taunt him with Twix bars and fudge rounds and just stuff like that. And he was kind of like Homer Simpson-esque where he was like, ooh, piece of candy. Or I guess that's Peter Griffin. But, you know, he was, you know, very into all the sweets and stuff. And at one point there's like a fudge round or an oatmeal cream pie brought into the ring. And he's like, please let me have that. Please let me have that. And he powders at one point, and he tells Hero, I got all these stupid fat people thinking they're skinny like me. And I laughed so hard. I was just dying laughing on the couch. It was so stupid. And it's so... And if you watch the match back, I put in my notes, I said, I'm sure Mike hated this. But this is a lesson in getting heat, doing nothing, and the fans just eating it up. Because they didn't do shit for the first 12 minutes of the match.
Yeah.
He's taking one punch, he's powdering out, he's yelling at the fans, he's, you know, just doing stupid stuff.
Yeah.
They definitely could have shaved some time on this one as well, just, you know, cutting down the stalling. But once they got moving, they actually did some cool stuff and some different stuff. I put in my my notes to send to Botchamania the head scissors to Harry Palmer. Do you recall that?
Yeah, I do. There's a couple of those too. Like I went for a 450 at one point and got kind of the full rotation, but almost didn't, and would have snapped both of his legs clean off.
Right.
But I mean, a dude that big that's putting in that kind of work is impressive. And yeah, I mean, yeah, there was a little bit of, you know, here and there, a couple things missed. There was a top rope, Frankensteiner threw some chairs. It's just a little bit of crazy stuff.
Right.
And I mean, at the end of the day, I think you described Harry Palmer pretty well from what I know about him, which isn't much. He is essentially a very goofy heel that's disguised as a serious heel. So in his mind, at least the character that he's portraying is someone who is serious, but the fans take it as this motherfucker is goofy as hell. He's taking these goofy ass bumps, but he's selling them like the son of a bitch, and it's funny and it's entertaining stuff to watch.
Yeah, I showed the some of this to Just Bee's Knees, and I said, you won't guess, and you will never guess how Harry Palmer takes off to take this shoulder tackle, and it is so funny the way he hits the ropes and then his bumps. I was just like dying laughing on the couch.
It's funny, super funny.
It's just super funny, and like I told you, talking about it, I wasn't sure if it was just funny to me and just because we know them, or if it would translate to you as well. But
I think it's a little bit of both. It's funnier to you for sure, but I can catch stuff too, and it's like, yeah, I get it. I get why people would be into this, why people think this is funny. It's funny.
Right. After that, we have the Resistance.
Cash ends up hitting the top rope leg drop, right?
Yes, he does the oh shit leg drop, and got some distance on it. He always got crazy distance on that. I mean, we've seen him jump out of off of bleachers. We've seen him jump out of balconies. There was a bar in Southern Indiana called like Third Base Bar, and he like jumped off like a second floor balcony to hit a leg drop.
Total disregard for the tailbone.
Yeah, he does not do the leg drop anymore. He is a frog splash kind of guy.
I'm surprised he can move. I mean, doing those types of leg drops for that period of time, landing straight on your ass every single time, and to still be able to move is impressive. Like you said, we get off the couch and we're creaking bones.
Right, for sure. Yeah. He anytime I see him at a show, I'll be like, "Oh shit, leg drop." He's like, "Oh no, brother, can't do that anymore." He's like, frog splash. And I was like, "All right, I'll take it."
I'll take it. Can I get a Hogan big leg drop?
Next up, we have the Resistance of Chris Hero, Mark Wolf, and Todd Morton against the Gold Bond Mafia of CM Punk, Colt Cabana, and Chucky Smooth with Dave Prazak. I believe Harry came out for the Resistance. The Resistance is a reference to the South Park movie. Because that was the thing at the time.
Yep.
Super offensive early 2000s promo work before Rico starts with the introductions. I'm not going to say anything that they said.
Nope. Morton promo not allowed in 2024 is what I have.
Right. They go back and forth for a while, and it just gets crazier as they go on. Chucky Smooth is actually Paulie Smooth at the time because he came into IWA as a Paulie Dangerously spoof. So very reminiscent of Mikey Whipwreck and all the characters in ECW that would be, making fun of promoters in the on the East Coast and stuff like that. And his hometown was Scarsdale, New York, and we brought in Big Dick Dudley in like 2000, and Paulie Smooth's in the ring, and he's like, people say I bounce checks and I do this and I don't pay people. Well, that's stupid and that's made up. And then Highway to Hell hits, and here comes a Big Dick Dudley, and he destroys Paulie Smooth. There was quite a few moments. With him as Paulie Smooth that there's Paul Heyman references. Like, he won the light heavyweight title, and the title of the show was called Hey Man, Paulie's Champ.
Yeah, and I think that it was probably in that next year that he would move to Chucky.
Yeah, he was Chucky Smooth everywhere else at the time, but at IWA he was Paulie Smooth, and then like you said, in 2002 when we moved from Charlestown, he became Chucky Smooth. This match breaks down very quickly with everyone fighting all over the place, and then it goes back into a tag. There is a double pin to get rid of Mark Wolf and Paulie Smooth, which turns into a regular tag at that point. And then the most notable thing of this match is the infamous reverse Thez press knuckle shuffle to the nuts spot from Punk and Hero. Hero still in the Superman shirt and the trip pants with the zippers to turn them into shorts. Phase of his gear. And then we have Cabana as the sole survivor. I believe he beat Todd Morton to win the match. Another match that definitely could have shaved some time off. And then after the match, Chucky Smooth hits a springboard dive onto
Oh my
people.
God.
I was like, what's going on here? What are we doing?
Yeah, it was crazy.
Any comments on this 6-man tag?
You mentioned the spot with Hero and Punk. It didn't look bad, and we talked about this off air a little bit. Punk's style, and especially at the time, was a little unconventional. So seeing something like that, it didn't register to me as being a screwed up move. It was like, okay, he's doing something different and awkward. But I mean, he basically gave him a flying gooch and then punched him in the junk like 5 or 6 times.
Right. Yeah, I think what Punk was actually going for was like the quesadilla into the bulldog, like Rey Mysterio uses, because Punk did use that. He did use that, and unfortunately, Hero didn't get the memo and fell back, and they.
And I feel like that frustration was probably what was like, I'm just gonna punch you in the junk a couple times. You're not playing along here. Take this. It wasn't a bad match. It wasn't a great match. It wasn't bad. Gold Bond Mafia came out to Freaks Come Out at Night by Houdini. Yes. So if we're talking, entrance music of the show, that's my pick. I know
that your pick?
We'll talk about that later, but that's my pick. It's between that.
Go ahead.
It's definitely between that and the perennial favorite of Whoa by Black Rob. Every single time he comes out, I'm gonna vote that way. But for sure, Freaks Come Out at Night, and it kind of set me back a little bit. Had I known about the American Pie reference, that may have changed things. But Freaks Come Out at Night is a great song.
Right.
And seeing Chucky Smooth maneuver his way to the ringside area and grind on people made it that much better. And then Punk and Cabana are just kind of walking out, and they're like, yeah, all right.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if that was the official Gold Bond Mafia theme or if it was just that one night only. We used to another sign of the times. At one point, IWA was doing raffles for lap dances. So I forget the females that did it, but one time there was a Gold Bond Mafia lap dance, and my good friend Back Row Beezy won the lap dance. So they would put a chair in the middle of the ring, and they would play a song, and they played the Freaks Come Out at Night for the Gold Bond Mafia lap dance. So definitely a sign of the times there.
So good. And now they're just raffling off bongs.
Right.
Anyways.
Tracy Smothers versus SABU versus Ian Rotten for this next match. And like I said earlier, I believe SABU is the reason why there are so many people in the building. My sister Patty was doing security for Tracy because he was such a hated heel.
Yep.
That it was for the normal heel in IWA, there was a guy, David, that would do security, and he would just follow along with him, making sure nobody touched him or whatever. For Tracy had my sister Patty, Linda, David, and I think someone, maybe Jim Fannin, as his security squad to make sure no one put hands on him or he put hands on the wrestling fans.
Do you know if Tracy preferred working heel? I feel like he had the most fun doing that.
Yeah, definitely.
He's definitely designed to look like a babyface, at least early on in his career. Very handsome, well put together, athletic guy. And I feel like somewhere throughout the course of his career, he it changed, and his heel work is by far the best stuff that I've ever seen of him throughout his career, as a young guy, as an old guy. You know, even as the attraction in some of the later shows that he was on, people came there to see him, but they came there to see him be a dick.
Right, totally. And that was part of it. One time I was at a Mitch Ryder show with Jess Beesneys and a friend of mine, and Tracy's music hit, and I like stepped back from the guardrail, and my friend was like, "Why are you stepping back?" And I was like, "I'm afraid Tracy might hit me because he knows me." And so I took 3 steps back from the guardrail because just he probably didn't know my name, but he'd always be like, "Hey man, how you been?" Blah 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 blah. So I was like, he knows me enough that he'd be like, take a clothesline, bam.
And apologize later. Sorry about that, man.
Right. Hey, sorry about that, man. Something got knocked loose. Sorry, man. I feel like the fans thought Sabu wasn't there.
Yeah.
Ian and Tracy start, and they're starting hot.
Yeah.
I believe this show got set up on the previous Wednesday, or maybe even the previous Saturday. And I want to say, and I could be wrong about that, I want to say maybe Sabu was a surprise as like a run-in or something. And that's how we set up the match. And like Tracy went through the concession stand wall, and it was like, I had a little bit of build to it. Even if Sabu wasn't unannounced run-in, I think, maybe Ian or whatever was like, "Oh, fucking Sabu's coming on Saturday, and me and him are going to mix it up," or, whatever the fuck. But Ian and Tracy are, in a heated feud at the time, 1 or 2 week build as it is. So they start rumbling, and the fans are chanting Sabu, 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 Sabu. And I felt like they thought that Sabu wasn't there.
Yeah, I kind of caught some of that too.
Like, I feel like had Sabu not been there, it could have been a bad situation.
Yep.
But Sabu was there, music hits. Sabu comes out, makes a late entrance. He gets great distance on a jump off a chair, springboard to the guys in the crowd. Almost called this a triple jump, but it wasn't a triple because he didn't jump back.
Yeah.
But
I feel like after watching this, I'm now of the position that every Sabu match, whether a triple threat or just a one-on-one match, should start with the match starting and then Sabu entering. There's something definitely dramatic about his entrance. You hear the boom, and you're like, "Oh shit, he's here now," and you kind of lose your shit a little bit. So like seeing Ian and Tracy kind of going at it, and it's like maybe, it's not that long, right? It's like maybe a minute, maybe only 30 seconds.
Yeah, like 30 seconds. Yeah.
The beat on the Sabu entrance drops, and you're like, "Oh fuck, here we go."
My buddy Fat Corey, who I've done podcasts with, who runs deathmatchworldwide.com. Go get you some deathmatch shirts or flags or hats or whatever you may want from deathmatchworldwide.com. But one time during the skating rink era of IWA, the Dreamers era of IWA, Shane Mercer had stopped working IWA and was working a rival Fed. And then he had a falling out with that Fed or whatever ended up happening, and he came back to IWA. So he comes back to IWA, and he runs through Aiden Blackheart. He runs through Sage Phillips, and Ian grabs the microphone, and he's like, "You know what, Shane? I love you, buddy, but you gotta pay the price. You gotta pay the piper. You turned your back, so you thought I was just gonna throw you someone easy, and it's not gonna be easy night for you." And then Hulk of Blues by Harry Slash starts up. Super Genie comes out the curtain, and then here comes Sabu. And as soon as that music hit, my buddy Fat Corey jumps up, and he turns around, and he looks at me, and he's looking at the entrance, and he's like, "No fucking way!" And then fucking Sabu comes out.
The dramatic entrance, and I think some of that is ingrained in us through the ECW stuff, and especially the stuff with Taz. Just like the dramaticness behind his entrance is part of his legacy.
Right, for sure. I want to say this is maybe the first time Tracy ever used a light tube. He blasted Ian with a couple of them on the floor.
He got him right in the face with a can too.
Right, yeah, hard with a Pepsi can. It looked like.
Right in the face. It wasn't like top of the head, forehead. It was like face.
Right, yeah,
Eat
just
this
right,
shit.
yeah. He was trying to bust his eyebrow. It looked like.
Yep,
and he ended up busting it, so it must have done its job. There's
got him.
Maybe a tape change or something like that, but then instantly there's a table on the floor, and Sabu and Tracy are battling, and then I think my sister starts a Tracy sucks chant, even though she was Tracy's security. 8 minutes earlier, Tracy goes over to the concession stand. He squirts Ian with mustard, and then Ian throws him through the concession stand to stop that. And then another weird moment in the show. I think a fan tries to hand Tracy like a knife or something. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I didn't catch all of it. I was like, what is happening?
I watched it a lot, and I was like, is that a gun or is that a knife or what the fuck is that? But my sister Patty is doing crowd control, and she sees this, and she's instantly pissed off.
Yeah,
she's like, "Are you a fucking idiot?" And again, I don't know what it was, and I want to say the guy was drunk or something because he didn't even really react to Patty yelling.
Yeah, he was like, whatever.
Yeah, and then he ends up being thrown out, I think. But
yeah, there's some interesting stuff. You mentioned the Tracy sucks chant, and it evolved a little bit from just Tracy sucks to like the competing Tracy sucks dick, Tracy sucks dick. And then, Ian at the end of the match, he's like, he's putting the chant over and he's pointing to one side, Tracy sucks, and he runs to the other side, dick. It's pretty funny. Yeah, definitely the most vile spot in wrestling history is that mustard. Squirting mustard on another man is disgusting. Mustard in general is fucking disgusting. Okay. Putting it on another human being makes me want to vomit.
Okay, you're the Rake Yawn of Jackass fame, hater of mustard. I don't mind vile. Mustard, but I don't want to be sweaty and potentially bleeding and have mustard squirted on me. I would have been very upset about that.
I definitely would have taken the light tube over the mustard shot.
Sabu hits an awesome triple jump moonsault, and then Tracy wins with a pin. Good Lord, with a pin on Ian.
A pin?
With a pin on Ian Rotten. Little known fact, Sabu never got pinned in his IWA career. He has 18 wins, 1 no contest, this 1 loss in a 3-way where he was not pinned, and 1 draw in a tables match.
Wow.
Like I said, 6 appearances for us in the year of 2001. I believe the reason that Sabu always won is because he wanted more money to lose. So it was like, well, shit. Guess you're going over, pal.
That's the most Ian and the most Sabu story all in one.
I mean, you gotta get it where you can get it.
I would love to know how much the difference is. Like, if it's like $5, I still see that Ian not going that way.
It's definitely a considerable difference. Crazy mic work afterwards. Between Ian and Tracy. They're going to have a Falls Count Anywhere match the next Wednesday. Tracy goes, if I hear Tracy sucks, I'm going to kill somebody.
Do you know much about Tracy's willingness to do hardcore matches? It's not something that he's known for, but seeing him pick up the light tube and be comfortable with it was pretty surprising.
Yeah, I think, Tracy's just one of those, like, I don't give a fuck kind of guys. And then later on, in like 2008, 2009, he actually did like a double death tournament with Corporal Robinson as his partner, as like the JCW tag or something like that. Wasn't scared to bleed and wasn't scared to do some crazy shit, as we all know. God bless Tracy Smothers. Tracy Smothers can do no wrong in my eyes. I loved every minute of this. Tracy's just a fucking maniac, man.
And he did everything well. It may not have been his thing, but he did everything well. He could go technical, he could go brawl, he could talk shit, he could play babyface, he could play heel, he could do anything.
Yeah, he did. Nobody looked out of place in this. It was the perfect storm of hardcore and brawling and, just A+ in terms of an IWA match at that time, in my opinion.
We talked about that off air too. Is on paper, Tracy Smothers, Ian Rotten, Sabu. What a random, compilation of 3 ECW guys. But it's the most IWA match you could draw up.
Right, definitely. Next up, we have Rugby Thug Trent Baker against Corporal Robinson. This is a boot camp match. The winner must say, "I quit." Rugby Thug Trent Baker was out of the Columbus, Ohio area, and he had made his IWA Midsouth debut the week before or the month before, and he was brought in to do a 3-month feud with Corporal Robinson and ended up staying essentially 2 years in IWA Mid-South. It was just a short, supposed to, help boost Corp as a babyface, and everyone liked him so much. He ended up winning the IWA Heavyweight title at one point, so he was definitely looked fondly upon. He came to the 20th IWA Mid-South anniversary show and just sat in the crowd and watched it and hung out. And every now and then in Ohio, he'll take in a show and, go meet Jimmy Hart or go meet, someone. Like, he came down to an IWA show in Indianapolis to get a picture with Sabu and meet Sabu because he's a big ECW fan. Shout out to the Rugby Thug Trent Baker. I'm going to try to get him on an episode of WrestleMania. So wish me luck. Wish me luck on that.
Is he, as far as you know, the only rugby-based professional wrestler in the history of wrestling? I can't imagine there's another one.
When Cesaro first started with WWE, he was kicked out of rugby because he was too violent. But he did not walk out with a rugby.
Son of a bitch.
A supposed loaded rugby ball. So that's why later on in the show, when I think Corp gets hit with the rugby ball from Shadow Kid, that's why it looks like death, because that was the gimmick at the time, that it was loaded. It had metal or something in it.
I feel like if you're billing yourself as a rugby player, you have to wear the rugby shirt. Otherwise, it doesn't count. Not fair.
You have to. I was instantly like, I should make a figure of the Rugby Thug using those old Four Horsemen Jax figures with the satin jackets.
Yeah.
I was like, that would be perfect.
Yeah.
Regardless, Corporal Robinson comes out and he's managed by a fan. I don't know if you noticed, just the random dude that was with him. He probably won a raffle or paid to be the manager for Corporal Robinson, but it's just like this, IWA fan that came every week, and sometimes you would win a lap dance at IWA. Sometimes you'd win a manager spot. Sometimes you'd win, whatever. And this fan won the, I guess the week before to be the manager of Corporal Robinson. This is Rugby Thug's second match in the company. He puts Corp through a bunch of light tubes. And this is in January, like I said. And he ended up winning the IWA Mid-South title in May of that year.
Wow. So
Ian and Jim and whoever else took a liking to Rugby Thug very quickly. Rugby Thug ends up winning the match, and I don't believe Corp said I quit. It was kind of janky and kind of, it was kind of very First Blood, like that first show that we did.
Right. Yep.
Where the stip is the stip, but then the finish happens and the stip isn't, played up or whatever the fuck.
Unless you ask Jim Fannin. If you ask Jim Fannin, IWA stips matter.
If he was in charge of all the steps, they would have been held up to. But
that's what we need. We need a regulator of IWA stipulations, and they all would have been. And I would have nominated Jim Fannin in a second, and all of the stipulations would have been met perfectly. No catch-up spots. No.
Right. No concession stand brawls.
Right. Jim Fannin is the law.
We saw it earlier with Suicide Kid. He would have done the same for Corporal Robinson. Corporal Robinson.
Quit. He would, in Jim Fannon's world, the match would not end until Corp was awakened and said the words "I quit."
Right. Corp ends up boot camping the referee, which is a Cobra Clutch Russian leg sweep, and that referee is Turtle of IWA lore, who sometimes still referees matches nowadays. So Turtle still going at it. Corporal Robinson just recently added me on Facebook and sent me a message and was like, "Hey man, how's it going?"
You made it.
So yeah, Corporal Robinson just basically says, this ain't the end of this. I'm coming for your ass. You're gonna fear what you don't understand, hate what you can't conquer, bitch. And any words for the rugby thug and Corporal Robinson?
The rugby ball beginning of finish. So Shadow Kid slides in, pulls the rugby ball out of the bag, hits Corp with it, makes a whole bunch of noise, and bumps the mat, and the referee does not see any of it right in front of his eyes. He's checking on the rugby thug, making sure the rugby thug is okay. Meanwhile, this entire thing happens. It's a huge commotion, and then the ref pops up, and he's like, "Oh, he's out. Ring the bell."
Right.
Respect to the referee.
There were some funny moments in IWA where they would hit somebody with a rugby ball, and then it would fall out of the ring and then just bounce, like a real rugby bounce like a real rugby ball, and you're like, "Oh shit, well, somebody grab that."
There ain't no cement in there.
and then you gotta act like it's heavy,
Yeah. I didn't know. I wasn't tracking the loaded rugby ball. I saw a rugby ball and I was like, "Huh, all right, that's interesting."
Right. Nowadays in Grindhouse that I do commentary for, there's a guy that comes out with a basketball and it's not loaded, but he uses it and bounces it off people's heads and shit like that. And then next up, we have the main event. I believe we only had 7 matches on this show.
That's it.
So I felt like that's why guys went long. And I asked Jim Fannin, I said, I wasn't really, and I'm not trying to talk inside baseball, but I think everybody listening to this already knows that what goes on in the middle of a wrestling ring and on a wrestling show. I asked, I wasn't really getting lineups because I wasn't doing anything. I was just going to shows and helping set up chairs. I wasn't doing sound yet. So I wasn't sure if, there was a lineup posted and then it'd be 10 to 12 minutes or, whatever. So I just asked Jim about, was there lineups posted or did they have times? And he's like, well, people didn't stick to their times. And he was like, I think, Ian or me or whoever would just run down the card, so-and-so wins in 12 minutes, so-and-so wins in 10 minutes, whatever. So I was just curious about, because, much later on, I was the one giving out the orders to the roster. So I was just curious how they did it back then, and then how I did it 20 years later. So yeah, I don't think people really stuck to their times. And with it not being a super show, I felt like they kind of had some leeway in terms of doing more shit or just, not ending the match when they should have ended the match.
And some of those matches, like the Resistance and the Gold Bond Mafia 6-man, it didn't have to be an elimination. They could have, gotten the story across with a single fall. So stuff like that kind of stretched it out a little bit. That didn't really need to be. I mean, it wasn't something where you're like, all right, let's get this over with. But it definitely took more time than it needed to, and didn't, I don't think, accomplish anything more than it would have if it was a single fall.
On Cage Match, I don't know who sent the times in, but Cashflow or Main Match Page and Alistair Figure had 13 minutes and 7 seconds. Shadow Kid and Isaiah had 5 minutes and 10 seconds. Cash and Harry Palmer was almost 15 minutes at 14:54. The 6-man tag match was 23 minutes and 43 seconds.
Yep.
Ian and Sabu and Tracy Smothers was 13 minutes, which it didn't feel like that at all. It felt like it just flew by.
Yeah.
And like I said, there was a camera cut at one point, so maybe we missed a minute or two or whatever. But yeah, it did not feel like 13 minutes.
Right.
But we have the main event.
Main event time.
Man Pondo versus Tuff Tony falls count anywhere. Tony, on his way to the ring, picks up a light tube chair. And when I say light tube chair, I mean a chair made out of light tubes.
Thank you for clarifying.
Metal chair frame. There's nothing. And then later on in the match, we would see a chair with light tubes taped to it that didn't have the seat. So also a light tube chair. But this is like a perfectly made chair to stand up. It has a seat. It has 4 legs. It has a back. And it's made all out of light tubes. Have you ever seen anything like that?
I have not. And, think of a rocking chair, that construction without the rocking mechanism of it. It was that made out of light tubes rather than wood. And it's essentially, fans treating light tubes as the Lincoln Logs of deathmatch wrestling.
Right.
They're building all kinds of crazy shit, whether it's a cabin, whether it's a chair from the ground up, whether it's a chair wrapped in light tubes, whether it's Snowflake that our good friend Ox Harley hates.
Right.
And we talked about a little bit, we have spoken about, the fans' creation of these weapons and taking something like a light tube and really embracing it and being like, you know what, I'm going to take several hours to build a chair from scratch out of these funny glass tubes, and hopefully they don't break in my hands.
Right.
There was a lot of dedication, I think, and the most unfortunate part about the creation of that chair is that they were just dropping each other through the contraptions. There was no thought into it. It was literally one guy picks the other up, walks across the ring, and drops him on top of the light tube chair. And, if it's me, I try to play up the chair element of it. Maybe I give him, a drop toe hold Raven style into the chair. Not sure that's a great idea, but anyways, that's why I don't do it. Play up the chair and not just a bundle of light tubes. I poured one out for the poor soul that built that chair, and respect to you, whoever that was. I'm sure you're out there somewhere. What an accomplishment.
Yeah, Tony tries like a spinning heel kick in the corner, and he hits one, and it's kind of wonky, and then he tries to hit another one, and Pondo catches him, and then just like has him on his shoulder, and kind of like a weird power bomb, and then like you said, just walked over, put him through the chair. Tony hilariously kicks a barbed wire ball into the crotch of Pondo. Pondo smashes a real guitar that he plays a second earlier over the head of Tony. That really shocked me.
Doing his best New Jack impression is kind of the way that I thought about it. Walking around.
But you can hear the strings being strung.
That thing exploded. It wasn't full of powder. It was slats of wood, and they fucking went everywhere.
Dude, he hit him so hard with that. I was like, holy shit.
And I mean, if you've seen the inside of a guitar, there's screws, there's all kinds of craziness that can go on in there and really fuck you up. And it was, I feel like it was a smaller guitar, like not really like a ukulele, but maybe like a kid's guitar, which means that the construction of it is even more dense. And I'm sure that hurt like a son of a bitch.
Pondo goes to the locker room and brings out log cabins, and you literally hear the crowd go, "Oh shit!"
The beauty of that camera work.
Right. And I don't know if I don't think this is the first time we'd ever used log cabins before, but maybe we hadn't used them too often. But you, like I said, literally hear the fans go, "Oh shit!" Like some shit's about to go down here. It's falls count anywhere, and then they put their foot on the rope.
Dude, I had that in my notes too.
It should have been counted. The fall should not have been stopped.
Fire that man.
Like I said,
and it was Mitch, right? Mitch came out and put the foot on the rope.
Yeah.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah, if he would have like grabbed them or grabbed someone or something, I get that. But like I said, falls count anywhere. One time at IWA Midsouth, my good friend Handsome Pat Monix was fighting his former tag team partner Elliot Paul, Eye Candy Elliot, and they had a falls count anywhere, and I was like, why don't we have him pin him in the ropes? It's falls count anywhere.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. So we ended up doing that, and the fans, as I'm announcing the winner, they're like, hey, he was in the fucking ropes. And I was like, the winner, it's falls count anywhere. You can win anywhere.
You could be outside the ropes.
It doesn't matter about the ropes. And the Memphis flea market fans did not grasp that.
That's a bummer.
That situation. Like I said,
we needed Jim Fannin.
Right.
Jim Fannin at ringside. No, that's absolutely not the stipulation. You can't do that shit.
Pondo wins with a superbomb through a light tube cabin. There's some other stuff with weapons being used. Like I said, that light tube chair was used.
There was a golf club.
Right. Golf club. They do a lot of stuff in the short amount of time that they have. Mitch gets involved with grabbing Tony's leg as he's going for a Hurricane Rana on Pondo. That's how Pondo's able to get the super bomb off. And then after the match, Tony grabs the microphone and goes, it made me laugh so hard. He goes, let me hear you, IWA. Is it fucked up or what? And I was just dying laughing. Like, what a phrase to say to the fans. Is it fucked up or what? Like, yeah, it's fucked up, man. You got screwed out of this wrestling match.
Oh, man.
And then Mitch and Pondo are cutting promos, and Mitch is like, when I go to the Juggalo tour, packed fucking houses. When I go to Japan, packed fucking houses. And then I come here with all you fucking assholes, blah, 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 blah. And then for the rebuttal, Roland gets on the microphone and goes, first of all, Mitch, this is IWA. And when we pack the building, we only make $20. And I laughed so hard. And I know he got in trouble for that. He probably got fired and then brought back the next week. But I laughed so hard.
It's not anything that anyone didn't already feel, though. Like, that's not a secret. There was a spot in the match. I think it was some type of a basket covered in light tubes, and they shoved it in the corner. And Pondo got dropped into it kind of head first, like a snake eyes kind of situation.
Oh, yeah.
And he almost took one right in the neck.
Dude, so sketch. Yeah, I remember that now that you say that. Yeah, I was watching that, and I was like, holy shit.
It was gross.
He did a lot of taking bumps, like, on his face or, like, near his face and stuff at that time. I mean, he still kind of does.
It's crazy.
Just a maniac. If the action looks like it's coming your way, it is. Counter, I don't believe that was said.
I heard one video similar, like, oh, shit, move, or something like that, but it wasn't an official counter.
Right. The Nick Maniwa Hit Your Music Best Theme of the Show, you're giving it to Freaks Come Out at Night. I'll probably give it to the Harry Palmer porn music.
See, it's the reference that makes that.
Right.
Without the reference, it doesn't mean a damn thing. With the reference, it's close one. Toss up. I like Freaks Come Out at Night. Right. That's my vote.
Harry Palmer would also hail from your girlfriend's house and stuff like that. And he was kind of like our Val Venus without being Val Venus before he totally turned heel. Match of the
Harry
night.
Palmer is our Val Venus. That's a great quote.
Like, at this point, he was just like, chubby heel guy. But before that, when he first debuted, he was a slim and trim and clean cut kind of guy. But he would have, like, all those graphic tees of, like, your mom's house or, Dr. Pecker and stuff like that.
You definitely have to file that quote in the only wrestling fans would get this cabinet.
Right. Match of the night. I'm going to have to give it to that three-way just because it's like the perfect IWA match for the time. Moment of the night.
No.
I don't know. I don't know about moment of the night.
Not the
Probably
mustard.
Suicide Kid jumping off the balcony.
No. Yeah, I like it.
Maybe my sister Patty throwing that guy out.
Yeah, that was good. I feel like she could get it any one of these shows we do, though.
Right. MVP of the show. I don't know.
Tracy?
Probably Tracy or Sabu. Probably Sabu because
Just being cool.
He drew the house.
I feel like, again, let's give it to Sabu because I'm sure we'll have another chance to give it to Tracy throughout his career.
Right,
so
for
let's
sure.
say Sabu.
I don't have any other notes. Do you have any other random notes?
I have no random notes. I do want to introduce our new segment that we're going to introduce, though. Would you like to introduce that first? That's Ask Maniwa.
We're on Reddit and stuff like that. They do AMAs, so we're gonna do an AMA Ask Maniwa Anything. So if you have any questions, and it doesn't have to relate to the show that we're doing, we're gonna pick a couple questions each show, and see if I know anything about what you're talking about. I'm not gonna get the questions beforehand, so it's gonna be all off the top of the head, and. Do we have any questions? I don't know if we have any questions.
I have one question this week.
Okay.
Let's go with this. If you have questions as part of the Ask Maniwa segment,
yes,
please send them to ruff.figures@gmail.com. That's ruff.figures@gmail.com. And we will pick the best ones. And without him knowing them beforehand, I'm going to relay these things to Nick, and we'll see what he got.
And before you... And if we don't use your question that week, we're going to compile them and maybe just do a whole episode of Ask Maniwa Anything or Ask Mike Anything. If you have any questions for Mike Ruff, nickmaniwa@gmail.com, and we'll just make this a point.
I'm sure there's tons of them.
Or something.
I'm sure there's tons of people. Please send your questions. It will make this very fun, I promise.
Right.
I do have a submission for this week. The word got out apparently, and we have one submission, so we're gonna roll with that one. Nick, you ready?
I'm ready, pal.
Okay. I have an email from wallawallawalter@gmail.com. His message says, "Hi guys, this is Walter from, I bet you can guess, Walla Walla, Washington. My favorite wrestler is Baron Von Raschke. Can you share your favorite Baron Von Raschke story? If not, can you share a favorite story of my fourth favorite wrestler, Corporal Robinson?"
I don't know a ton about Baron Von Raschke. I know he was a teacher on the, like when school was in session, he would teach, and then he would wrestle during the summer months. So I always thought that was pretty cool. I did have one of those Legends figure toy company figures of him that I got in a random lot, or
was it bloody?
Got it. It was not bloody. I did have a bloody Eddie Gilbert figure though.
They fucked up the blood there for the second wave of those things. I think the first one was King Kong Bundy, and the blood looked great. And then they're like, "Fuck it, I'm just gonna finger paint on this thing with red paint and call it blood," and they look like shit.
Right. So Baron Von Raschke, I don't have a ton about. Much respect to him. Corporal Robinson, I'm trying to think of a good Corporal Robinson story.
Apparently, it's Walter's fourth favorite wrestler, so don't disappoint.
I mean, you gotta have a top 10,
I kind of wonder who is 3 and 4 or 2 and 3.
2 and 3, right?
I'm sure they're remarkable.
I wonder if we would be able to. I would assume we would be able to do the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon with Baron Von Raschke and Corporal Robinson. He definitely.
I got 2 degrees. 2 degrees. And I mean this as a joke, Corp. Don't come find me. Baron Von Raschke was a teacher. Corporal Robinson never met a teacher. How's that?
No, I feel
kidding, Corp. Don't come hunt me down.
We're just fucking around. he'll hit that boot camp on you, bitch.
And call me bitch after.
I feel like we could do Corporal Robinson, Sherry Martel to Baron Von Raschke, probably.
Oh, you got the roadmap, Nick.
Yeah, Sherry Martel did some IWA and Mid-American wrestling shows.
How crazy is that?
And then Nick Bockwinkel did a Mid-American wrestling show. It was just an appearance, and Harley Race. So I feel like we could get there. But let me think of a good Corporal Robinson story. I'm trying to think of a like I said, the statute of limitations has run out, and no one will get sued. Or man, you're really Walla Walla Walter's really stumping me here.
What a son of a bitch you are, Walter. Thank you for your question.
Right. I think maybe just a funny story, and there's nothing we can do about it now. Is at one point it was like Corp was living with Ian, and it was like Russell House, Kentucky, and Chris Hero lived there for a short time, and Mark Wolf lived there for a short time, and Bad Boy Hito from Japan, when he stayed over in 2001, he lived with Ian, and Necro lived there at one point. Just, Axel lived there at one point. Just, it was a wrestler house. But anyway, one time we were sent out to go flyering for the show. I believe we had Road Dogg on the show, or we had someone of a bigger name on the show. So we wanted to hit the town and put up flyers and, go to comic book shops and all that stuff. Well, it was me, Corp, I forget who else, in the car. And we're like, okay, we're going to go flyering. And we flyered a little bit. And then finally Corp was like, you know what, F this. And then he just put 500 flyers in a dumpster and was like, okay, where are we going to eat at? And we just didn't flyer for the show. so I think that's my Corporal Robinson story. And him and Ian Rotten don't get along anymore, so there's not anything Ian can do about it now. So
I'm sure in the grand scheme of things, that will not be the reason why they don't get along anymore.
Right. Yeah. So thanks, Walter. If you have questions for me, Ruff.Figures@gmail.com. If you have figures for Mike, nickmaniwa@gmail.com. Title the email Midsouth Memories Questions. That way we know what's going on. And I guess we can call it AMA because it's Ask Maniwa Anything or Ask Mike Anything. So that kind of works out pretty well.
That's right.
So
what else do you got going on your schedule?
I have, let's see. I have Generation Next Pro Wrestling, February 3rd in Cynthiana, Kentucky. Already signed. The Big Bad, Brandon Taggart, taking on the walk-in weapon, Josh Alexander, in a first-time ever match. So I'm very excited to meet and call a Josh Alexander match. After that, I have another Generation Next Pro Wrestling show at the Arena. I believe, let me actually just pull up I'm always scared I'm going to hit hang up when I'm doing stuff on the phone and doing the Skype stuff. So let's see. And then tomorrow, obviously this recording is not going to be coming out tomorrow. I think I'm going to drop it the Tuesday after Royal Rumble. That way, we have some other stuff to promote instead of just people talking about the Royal Rumble. Sunday, I have Grindhouse Pro Wrestling's Rumble, which is our Royal Rumble type show that Grindhouse does every January. If you're interested in going to professional wrestling shows in Southern Indiana, every last Sunday of the month, Grindhouse Pro Wrestling runs a family-friendly wrestling show in Jeffersonville, 1416 Spring Street at the Jeffersonville Arena. Like I mentioned, Generation Next Pro Wrestling at the Cynthiana Sports Complex in Cynthiana, Kentucky, with Josh Alexander and Brandon Taggart. February 10th, Generation Next Pro Wrestling at the Arena in Jeffersonville. And then February 24th, Unsanctioned Pro, Royal Flush, I believe it's 3, Valleydale Ballroom in Columbus, Ohio. Already signed for that. Neil Diamond Cutter and John Wayne Murdoch for the UP Hardcore title. Let's see, what else? Generation Next on March 2nd, 2024. On March 8th, I have Paradigm Pro Wrestling. They're having 2 8-people tournaments for that night. And then I don't know if I know I mentioned it to you, and I know I'm going down, but this is all the dates I already have signed. I'm already signed to. I know I'm going months and months in advance, and I'll continue to promote these and promote more as the time comes. But 420, 518, and 615 Unsanctioned Pro will be at the Ace of Cups in Columbus, Ohio. Our new home venue. We are going monthly for the first time in 6 years. So I'm definitely looking forward to being in the Columbus territory a little more often. And then on April 21st, 2024, Paulcade, A New Beginning at the arena. My pal Chad French hosts a fundraiser show every year for the animals of the Salem Animal Shelter. We did a raffle last year with that Cole Radrick figure to help raise some money, and I believe we ended up raising like $400 or $600, or what was it?
I think it was 400.
Yeah, 400 from our pal Bear, Joyful Violence on Twitter. So thank you, Bear, once again. So that is what I have coming up in the foreseeable future. What do you got going on over there, Mike?
Knocking out a couple more orders. We got some fun stuff going on. We did some fun stuff. Was it last weekend, 2 weeks ago? When you did that GCW show, getting some figures to Dave Prazak, which was, an accomplishment on my side as someone who's been into the IWA stuff for a long time and a big fan of Dave. To have him, be moved by those figures is pretty cool, and do a little shout out video and everything. And then we did a deal with Ice that some people may have seen, rocking the new custom Ruff.Figures hockey jersey in connection with the Cole Radrick baseball jersey for the Garbage Daddies. That was a cool thing to see play out, in a show, and hopefully that's something that they revisit as they tag. But we did those 2 things. We got a couple more things coming. Nick, you mentioned the animal deal with the whatever that was, the Cole Radrick figure.
Paulcade, yeah.
We'll have another similar something going on here in the near future. Not sure when. I think we'll drop that sometime in the next couple months. With a familiar to IWA fans name, and a pretty cool figure on that front. Stay tuned. Nick will put the stuff over for Ruff.Figures. And then, as usual, if you have anything you want to ask about, order, look at, Ruff.Figures.com is your destination. There'll be, I think, another something publicly dropped here in the next week or 2 with a familiar name to the indie wrestling community. Similar to the Maniwa and Dave Prazak figures, we'll say. So keep an eye out on that. That'll be fun, hopefully. And it's been a lot of cool stuff happening, so I'm happy to see it, and stuff's finally seeing the light of day. So that's about all I got, other than the craziness of everyday life.
Right, for sure. Same. Yeah, the weather here and sickness and injuries this week was like the first time both of my kids had went to school in like 2 or 3 weeks. So I was able to knock some commentary out. Look for Flophouse Private Stash 8 to hit IWTV in the very near future. As always, you can follow me at nickmaniwa on all social media. I have everything. You can hit up Mike Ruff at Ruff.Figures.com because he has nothing.
That's right.
I think with that, we're gonna end this one. Obviously, next month we will do a February show. We have quite a few picks to choose from because IWA, starting in 2013, would do yearly February shows called Heartbreak, and sometimes Ian would, the week after Heartbreak would be Hardcore Heartbreak, and then the week after that would be Heartbreak after Heartbreak, and there's so many February shows. So if you have any suggestions, let's try to not do a 2001 show because we just did one. But if you have any suggestions, we try to stay in the month that we are currently in years past for these shows. So if you have any suggestions, if you have any comments, if you have any feedback, if you have any anything at all, let us know. We want to hear your feedback. I do know people listen. I do know people will say, hey, great podcast, or whatever. So leave us reviews, leave us like it on all the apps that you have and stuff like that. And hopefully in this year we can do some extra stuff and really get this going, get some ads, get some sponsors and stuff like that. So with that, we're going to take it home. We're not going to go over our time. We're not going to need to shave 5 or 10 minutes from our time on this podcast. I've been Pro Wrestling's BFF Nick Maniwa. He is Mike Ruff of Ruff.Figures.com. And we will see you next month here on Midsouth Memories. That's all I got to say. I'm out of here.